What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I usually sit down and take a bunch of videos that tell one overarching story and combine them together into one big video. Today's full story video is going to be about, well, the X-Men once again, but the epilogue for the major crossover better known as Avengers X-Men Onslaught. And the reason why, because these three chapters really did kind of set everything up for the future of Marvel Comics. You did have some heroes be removed for the time being over into the Heroes Reborn universe. But at the same time, this epilogue also set up the next crossover for the X-Men. And so with that being said, I do hope you enjoy today's full story video. Here we go. Okay, so we have now officially reached that point where we're now going to sit down and talk about Onslaught, the Marvel Universe. This is technically the ending point of the actual crossover. Like, this book right here says, you know what? Let's go ahead, get rid of Onslaught, but also like bring in a brand new universe, the Heroes Reborn universe. And with this brand new universe, I'm going to sit down and cover that in separate videos that might come out like, once a week or twice a week. But either way, I kind of want to sit down and also cover the Heroes Reborn universe. With all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the defeat of Onslaught. And really, as you get into the opening pages of the storyline, you're picking up with the Watcher. Now remember, when it came to the Watcher, he was there at the beginning of phase 1, I want to say, when it came to him saying this is going to be the end of the era of heroes. And he kept saying that over and over again. And you had Apocalypse there as well. And for Apocalypse, he believed the same thing as well. This is going to be the end of the era of heroes. And once this era ends, Apocalypse feels like it'll be the right time for him to move in and, of course, bring in a brand new Age of Apocalypse. Now, at the end of our finale video for phase 2, we had picked up with Charles Xavier confronting Onslaught. Now, when he did that, by that point, Onslaught had changed his mind on a lot of different things. And let me explain. You see, for Onslaught, his main goal was to allow the mutant race to become first class. Humans, second class. His goal was very similar to Apocalypse from the Age of Apocalypse reality. That's why he kidnapped Nate Gray, to learn more about that reality. But once he had learned, in that reality, you have mutants like the X-Men and a few other characters go out of their way to stop Apocalypse in that reality as well. And so for him, he hates the idea of both humans and mutants. He hates the humans because, humans were always showing their hatred towards the mutant race. But he also hates the mutants now because they're trying to fit in with the human race. Now, with all that being said, it's also him saying Charles Xavier, I am literally you. All the darkness inside of you, that is me. And I'm part of Magneto as well. And so for Onslaught, his main goal now is to kill off Charles Xavier. And so this kind of leads into the first chapter or first battle in this storyline, where we see at the very last second Rogue being able to save Charles Xavier. We kind of saw that at the end of phase 2, where you had Jean Grey and Cyclops both realize that Charles had dipped out, and y'all kind of realized that Charles went over to confront Onslaught by himself. But either way, you do have the X-Men arrive. And as y'all know, the X-Men are not technically that strong enough to defeat Onslaught on their own. But of course, this is Marvel back then trying to get everything set up where you're going to have a few characters off the board and moved over to the Heroes Reborn universe. So at first, it's just the X-Men. It's them right now trying their best to fight against Onslaught, but of course they get defeated. You have the Avengers appear. Now, when the Avengers appear, this is the point where you can kind of tell okay, This is Marvel getting ready to remove some characters off the board. The Avengers, the Fantastic Four. But here's the thing. The Hulk is not going to disappear. Like, he will actually stay behind. And his book that he has currently will continue on. But for Iron Man, Captain America, Fantastic Four, the Avengers, they're all going bye-bye by the end of this event. But yes, they're all here together now to fight against Onslaught. Now, we also have to remember that when it comes to Onslaught, the reason why he's so powerful now is because at this point, he already has Nate Gray, and he also has Franklin Richards as well. But now it's these two characters kind of agreeing that they have to work together to find a way out of Onslaught to hopefully defeat him, to hopefully and finally be free. But while you have that going on inside the body of Onslaught, on the outside, you have our heroes still trying their best to fight against this powerful being, but of course, they're basically struggling. Now, with Franklin Richards being inside Onslaught, that means he has the ability to use Franklin Richards powers however he wants to use Franklin Richards powers. And so right now, what you're seeing is basically Franklin Richards' power is being used by Onslaught to create a second sun that does seem like it's going to crash into the earth. So you do have our heroes right now trying to fight against him, but also stop that as well. But this kind of leads into different plans happening while this whole entire chapter is going on. So for example, you have Cable kind of help Charles Xavier and Magneto build up a plan to kind of help get Nate Gray and also Franklin Richards out of the body or out of Citadel of Onslaught. And so you have Cable say, listen, I can use my powers to kind of work on Magneto powers to help guide his powers into your brain, to remove the blocks that basically Onslaught have put into your mind so that you didn't have the ability to use your powers again. With that being said, once your powers are restored, it's up to you and Magneto to work together to go inside a Citadel to get Nate Gray, to get Franklin Richards, and get them the heck out of there. Now, while you have that plan going on, Dr. Doom believes he has an idea to kind of bring down the force field that Onslaught has around him at the moment. But of course, it involves the powers of Rogue and another member. Now, at first, I kind of thought like, okay, it's also going to involve Gambit as well, because how close Rogue and Gambit are. No, it's Rogue and Vision. But while you have those two characters getting ready, you also have every other person around New York kind of seeing what's happening when it comes to that second son. You know, you got Foggy and I want to say Karen Page possibly from Daredevil. You also have, you know, Jonah there and Robbie Robertson from Daily Bugle. You have a few other Marvel characters right now just wondering what is going to be the end result of everything happening. But when it comes to Doctor Doom's plan, what he wanted to do was have the Vision kind of merge with Rogue, of course, you know, being able to phase inside her body. With him doing that, it's kind of like the two characters adding their strength together. And so while you have Thor, I want to say it was Thor, Giant Man, Wolverine attack the force field, they allow a small part of the barrier to go down to allow Rogue inside the barrier to actually hit Onslaught. Now, of course, it does not stop him, no, but it does bring down a force field around Onslaught to allow our heroes the next part of their plan to go into work to hopefully bring him down. And that brings in the Hulk. You see, like I said earlier, when it came to Marvel Comics, all the names I mentioned earlier, the Avengers, Fantastic Four, they all go into the Heroes Reborn universe over there. The Hulk does not. And here's the reason why. Because you have the Hulk tell Jean Grey, like, hey, listen, I need you to kind of like shut down the Bruce Banner side in my mind. Because basically, Bruce is holding me back. If Bruce is no longer around, that gives me the ability to fight against Onslaught as a full-on savage. But also, I'll be way stronger. And I should be able to help us bring him down. And so this battle right here is the reason why the Hulk does not go into the Heroes Reborn universe. So you do have the Hulk begin to literally go toe-to-toe with Onslaught here. And so while you have the Hulk fighting against Onslaught, you didn't have like the rest of the heroes, especially Reed Richards and also Susan Richards, kind of realize this is their supposed end point. Like they're all going to die basically. Like all their decisions kind of led up to this moment right here. And so you have our heroes kind of realize like, this is the best time to be together, to fight alongside with your friends for one last time to hopefully save the world. Now, of course, this also means that Reed and Sue are going to have to leave behind their son Franklin if Charles and Magneto are able to save Franklin and also Nate Gray from Onslaught as well. Now, for Onslaught, he believes that he's winning the battle, that he'll be able to defeat the Hulk. The thing is, the angrier the Hulk gets, the stronger he gets. And so just like that, you have Hulk give one last blow. And so with the Hulk being able to deliver that one last punch, it does seem like at first the Hulk was able to bring down Onslaught. Except here's the thing. Hulk is knocked out. So this is why the Hulk does not go into the Heroes Reborn universe. But also, when it comes to Onslaught, basically, he's now just pure psionic energy all over again. But what you have the heroes do instead, they run towards this huge amount of psionic energy, which is Onslaught. But their masks of their bodies begin to break apart that pure energy he is. And so one by one, they're kind of making him smaller and smaller, basically getting to that point where he's going to be defeated. So you do have the Avengers go in first. Now, here is what I do want to say. The Scarlet Witch does go inside because, again, around this time in Marvel Comics, the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, they were still known as mutants. But the reason why she was able to go inside because she is well protected by her hex magic. Quicksilver is not. And so he does not go into the Heroes Reborn universe. Now, you do have other characters go into Onslaught as well, like Doctor Doom. Now, at first, Doctor Doom was not going to go at all. But you had Hawkeye stop Doctor Doom, Iron Man grabs Doom, and they go into the psionic energy. So just like that, there goes Onslaught. Now, here's the thing, because now it all comes down to all the non-X characters going into Onslaught, while the X characters stay behind. Here's the reason why. Because you have Reed say, listen, this all began because of a mutant, Charles Xavier, and also Magneto, but more Charles Xavier. And he's kind of like, if any mutant gets touched or absorbed by Onslaught here, then basically he has a new vessel, which means sooner or later, all of this will happen again. And the problem is you'll have less heroes to work with when it comes to fighting against Onslaught. So with that being said, the X-Men, X-Force, X-Factor, they cannot get involved at all. You all got to stay behind. And so just like that, you didn't have Reed and Sue go into it as well. Now, like I said, Quicksilver does not because he is a mutant at his time, but his sister, Scarlet Witch, she does because she was protected by hex magic. I should probably also mention that the Inhumans, some of the Inhumans also go as well, like Crystal, which for me personally, I'm kind of like, she could have stayed behind with her husband and their child, but of course she goes as well. So for Quicksilver, he's now on his own. But while you have all the non-X heroes go inside Onslaught, you didn't have all the X heroes attack that psionic energy. And so just like that, you didn't have this huge explosion. Now, before you had that huge explosion, Magneto and also Charles Xavier, they were able to grab Nate Gray and Franklin Richards to get the heck out of there. So the day is officially saved. Now, this begins a whole new list of problems for our heroes, starting off with the human race. And let me explain why. Because you have folks there who work for the media just watching what happened. They watch their heroes, Avengers, Fantastic Four, go into Onslaught. And then you had the X-Men, which are mutants, attack Onslaught, which of course caused a huge explosion. They basically saw what could be the death of the Avengers and also the Fantastic Four. So now the question is, are the humans going to blame the mutants, especially the X-Men, for what just happened? Because now this world no longer has heroes, quote unquote. They still have the X-Men and a few other characters like Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, and list goes on, but not the Avengers and not the Fantastic Four, the supposed big time heroes for the Marvel Universe. And you also have to remember about Apocalypse because he's kind of like, cool, with the heroes no longer around, that means he has a clear path to bring in the age of Apocalypse. Like this man is truly ready to just bring chaos to Earth very soon. But while you have the Apocalypse, not the Apocalypse, but Apocalypse walk away, you didn't have the Watcher kind of mention that even though it does seem like we're at the end of the era of heroes, those heroes are not officially lost, kind of hinting at the idea of them being somewhere else. And of course, it is the Heroes Reborn universe. And so just like that, we now have 4 brand new titles to cover. Fantastic Four, number 1. Iron Man, number 1. Avengers, number 1. And of course, Captain America, number 1. With that being okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and like dive back into our coverage over the X-Men. And with us doing that, we're going to pick up with Uncanny X-Men issue number 337. Now, we're only covering 2 issues for today, but this is really more like the true epilogue for the Onslaught event. I know our last video, I basically said like it's labeled as the Onslaught epilogue, but like for me, that was just the end. Like that was the last chapter for the main event. For me, these next 2 videos are truthfully like the epilogue for the entire event. But either way, we do pick up with Wolverine and Charles Xavier. And the reason why I like this conversation because it's Charles Xavier trying to be that loner that Logan used to be. And so it's Logan realizing what Charles is trying to do. It's him right now trying to just shut out the world around him. Now, for me personally, I'm kind of like Charles Xavier is at fault for what exactly happened when it came to Onslaught. Like you could argue like, no, it was Charles Xavier and Magneto's fault. But at the same time, it was Charles who decided to shut down the mind of Magneto, where of course he did absorb the darker side of Magneto's mind into his mind, which of course created Onslaught. But either way, it's Charles kind of blaming himself for what he did. He's like, hey, you know, it's my fault the world, really New York City, got completely wrecked. That Franklin Richards no longer has his parents. That the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, they're all gone at the moment. And that right there is my fault. Quicksilver is downstairs right now feeling sad because his wife and his sister have both just disappeared. Because at the end of our last video, the Avengers, Inhumans, Fantastic Four, they all went into Onslaught and disappeared. Now we already know they went over to the Heroes Reborn universe. But this was Marvel also kind of like, okay, cool. Even though we had just wrapped up one event, it's time for us to go ahead and get ready for the next one because it's the X-Men. In the 90s, they were Marvel's most popular property. And so you have them right now working their way up to Operation Zero Tolerance. We pick up with Bastion getting ready to go after the X-Men because what happened in New York can never happen again when it comes to the mutant race. And so it's him right now saying like, we got to go ahead and get rid of these mutants. And technically, he's not the only one trying to use what happened with Onslaught as a way to say, you know what, it's time to get rid of the mutant race. Because we do pick up with Graydon Creed. Now remember, Graydon is the son to Mystique and also Sabretooth, but he came out human, not a mutant. But either way for Graydon, his main goal right now, like I said, is to get rid of the mutants. But he's running for president. And so he's just standing where Onslaught was, where the battle took place. He's kind of like, look around. Look at what the mutants did. Like, how in the world can we accept this? This is not okay. They gotta go. Now, Spider-Man, he's there because, one, he does work for the Daily Bugle, but also kind of like he needs these pictures, but it's also him kind of like showing us that he is a hero. Like, he understands what exactly happened when it came to Onslaught, when it came to heroes who had disappeared. But for Graydon, he's right now trying to spin it in a way where it's like, you need to vote for me so I can promise you that this will never happen again. And we do kind of switch over to the Daily Bugle, and we pick up with J. Jonah Jameson and also Robbie Robertson. Now, for these two characters, they're watching Graydon on live TV give his speech, right? Now, for JJ, he kind of feels like there's something special about Graydon Creed. Now, at first, it does kind of seem like he's on Graydon's side, but it's kind of like he wants to know more about Graydon Creed. He wants to bring out the truth about the man because he kind of realized that Graydon is very serious about the fact of getting rid of the mutant race. And so this begins JJ trying to figure out what is the actual truth backstory for Graydon Creed. But now we kind of switch over to the X-Men, starting off with Cyclops. And for Cyclops, it's kind of like him being the first X-Men is also like this is the first person who has to begin the process of a new beginning for the X-Men, because it all began with him and Charles Xavier. And so you have Cyclops getting up but kind of realizing that this is going to be a huge adjustment for him and also for the rest of the X-Men. Because, again, the person they trust the most, Charles Xavier, turned evil, created this powerful being known as Onslaught, wrecked New York, got rid of the Avengers, got rid of the Fantastic Four. Like, he did a lot of damage. But for Cyclops, he looks at Charles as his father, like most of the X-Men do. But this whole entire event did not just only affect Cyclops. There were other characters who were also affected by this event. Like, for example, Beast. Man, I feel bad for Beast. But for Beast, remember, before the whole event kicked off, he was kidnapped by his evil counterpart from the other reality, better known as Age of Apocalypse. And so for Beast, it was also him trying to adjust to the fact that, like, he was replaced by somebody else. And unfortunately, most of the X-Men were unable to figure out that Beast was not really, well, Beast. But it's him being happy with the fact that he's back with his friends. He now has the ability to be with them again and rebuild that bond with them all over again. Now, I had mentioned this character earlier who was truly affected by the events of Onslaught, and that would be Quicksilver. Because yes, even though his father had returned, Magneto at this point, he lost the Scarlet Witch and also Crystal, his wife and his sister. They both left into Onslaught, into a brand new reality, as we all know, Heroes Reborn. And so now for Quicksilver, it's just him and his daughter. And so this is kind of like Marvel saying, let's go ahead and backtrack on this character. And the reason why I'm saying that, because there was a point in time where Quicksilver was part of X Factor. Like, he was really close with all the X characters for a good period of time in the early 1990s. But then out of nowhere, he was moved away from all the X books. It's now Marvel saying, let's go ahead and backtrack and put the man back in the X books all over again. We also kind of get that moment where you have Psylocke arrive. Now, when Psylocke does arrive, it's kind of hinting at the possibility that, like, there's something different about her. Because remember, when it came to Sabretooth, he almost killed her. But you had Archangel and Wolverine being able to give her the Crimson Dawn. So it kind of left to wonder, like, how has that truly affected her? Now, the rest of the first chapter that we are covering is really more of us just kind of seeing Wolverine telling us, or really reminding us, that when it comes to Charles Xavier, he lost his powers thanks to his battle against Onslaught. So it's also Marvel trying to do something new and different with the character of Charles Xavier, but also with the entire X-Men team. But it's Charles truthfully going to shut himself away from the rest of the X-Men, the people that he had brought into his lives who look at him as a father figure. And so you do have Logan leave. And so to close on the last few pages of the storyline, we really do pick up with the X-Men coming together for breakfast. Now, here's the thing, because, okay, these last 3 pages are really important also for the character known as Gambit, really Gambit, Rogue, and Magneto. And let me explain, because in the Onslaught crossover for Rogue, she kind of went back and forth. You know, there was a point in time where it seemed like, okay, she's going to leave him behind and move on to Magneto. But then there was one point where it did seem like she had forgiven Gambit and might go back with him. But right now, it's Magneto trying to adjust to the idea of living with the X-Men again, because again, for this Magneto, he does not remember anything from his past life prior 3 months ago. And so for him, he's just kind of lonely. And so for Rogue, she feels bad for him. And she's right now with him. And for Gambit, he shows that he is truthfully jealous. But either way, the ending of this chapter is really more of the X-Men coming together for breakfast and kind of like being able to have a new start in their lives. But when we transfer over to X-Men issue number 57, we're really kind of getting into that idea of you having Marvel remove Charles Xavier. And the reason why I'm saying that, because we pick up with Charles Xavier right now in the room with Cerebro Izette. And when it comes to Cerebro, it's Charles asking it like, I need you to locate Charles Xavier or Professor X. And the problem is, it can't. And so it really shows that right now for Charles Xavier, he's basically powerless. And this right here kind of makes him realize that maybe he should just go ahead and begin to move away from the X-Men. But this kind of gets into the major point of this video. And the reason why, because you do have Val Cooper arrive. Now for Val Cooper, she works for the government. Really, she works for X Factor as well. But her main goal is to kind of like build relations between the government and also the mutant race. And so any mutant affairs, she has to handle it. And so it's her right now arriving at the school of Charles Xavier. And she's there to arrest Xavier. Like, hey, I got to bring him in. Now, for Cyclops, Wolverine, Bishop, Cannonball, Iceman, really most of the guys on the X-Men team, they're kind of like, you can't do that. But for her, she's kind of like, I don't have a choice here. Like, we saw what just happened not too long ago when it comes to Charles Xavier losing control of his abilities. Like, what if there's a possibility that could happen again? And that time around, we're not really able to win. Like, what if he becomes Onslaught? Because if he does, we have less heroes on the board to actually handle that kind of situation. And so for her, she does have a good reason. But for the X-Men, they also believe like we have a good reason. Like, hey, he made a mistake, we're going to move on. That's their actual reason. But then you have Storm arrive. Now for Storm, she realized that Val Cooper is right. Like, what he did is crazy. Like, the Avengers are gone. The Fantastic Four are gone. Like, really, half the heroes of the Marvel Universe at this point in time have been officially removed off the board. But then we got to put that on a pause. And the reason why, because now we have to transition over to Beast. Now, this is Beast meeting up with, of course, Trish Tilby. Now, for Trish Tilby, she was the long-term girlfriend for Beast when it came to like late X-Men, going to X Factor and all that stuff. Now, here's the thing though. She is a reporter. And so they broke up because of that. Because basically she told the world about the legacy virus. As we all know, the legacy virus is going around killing off mutants left and right. Now, supposedly the virus had evolved and now going after humans as well. And so it was her who told the world like, hey, listen guys, there's this virus that the mutant race and the government has been hiding from us that's going around right now, killing off mutants, but also killing off humans. But originally, it was only going after the mutant race. And so for Beast, he felt betrayed in the fact that she told the world about that virus. But as Beast kind of realizing that maybe he went a little too far, breaking up with her and stuff. And so it's him right now trying to reestablish their relationship, hoping to get back and falling in love again and be a couple. But now we have to jump back over to the X-Men. Now, when we do, it's now time for Jean Grey to talk. Now, for Jean Grey, when she talks, she's kind of like, listen, you guys have to understand where Val Cooper is coming from. Like there is a possibility of Charles turning into Onslaught all over again. But it's Jean Grey also telling us and reminding us that she was there at the very beginning of the crossover in the mind of Charles Xavier. She was the first one to figure out like, okay, Charles is Onslaught and we are screwed. Like she saw the whole mental breakdown of Charles Xavier. But it's also Val Cooper showing like all these different news report about what happened when it came to the Onslaught event. People died. People lost their homes. People lost a lot of things thanks to him turning into Onslaught. And so as Val Cooper saying, I'm trying to prevent that from happening. But also right now, the relation between mutants and humans is at an all-time new low. Like right now, we might see an actual war between the two parties. But once again, we got to put that on the back burner. And the reason why, because now we switch over to J. Jonah Jameson. Now, this is JJ meeting up with Bastion. In the last chapter, we saw at first where it kind of seems like maybe JJ's on Graydon's side, Graydon Creed's side, but now it kind of shows like, no, he realized there's something bigger going on with Graydon Creed. And so for JJ, he wants to expose Graydon. But for Bastion, we can't have that. And so it's Bastion saying like, I need you to stop. I need you to stop yourself from trying to expose anything about Graydon Creed. But it's JJ saying like, dude, there's no way I'm going to stop. There's no way you can make me stop. Now, as we all know, there is a way. But for JJ, he ain't going to stop. Now, as we do switch back over to the school again, we now get Magneto involved. Now, for Magneto, at this point in time, he's going with the name Joseph. But for Val Cooper, she's surprised the X-Men allow Magneto to stay. But technically, he has nowhere to go because, again, he does not remember anything from his past prior to 3 months ago. And so for Magneto, with him being there, she's kind of like, okay, that's huge. But also it's him saying like, if you're going to take Charles Xavier, you should also take me. Now, that is why I say like, you could technically argue and say it's both Charles and Magneto's fault. But at the same time, we all could say that it's just Charles' fault because Charles was the one who did shut down the mind of Magneto, where of course he did absorb the darker side, the darker thoughts of Magneto into his mind. And so it's kind of like, can you really blame Magneto for having a part in the creation of Onslaught, or technically just blame Charles for the whole entire thing? But that is when you have Charles Xavier arrive. Now, when Charles arrives, he's like, everybody stop. Like, everyone just stop. Like, we have to realize that me, Charles Xavier, at fault for what had happened in New York. And matter of fact, even things leading up into the crossover, I have to take full on responsibilities for those actions as well. Because for a good while there, you had Marvel just drop small hints of Onslaught here, Onslaught there. And it's kind of like, okay, who is Onslaught? What is Onslaught? But the entire time, it was Charles Xavier. So it's not just him, saying like, hey, I have to answer what I did in the crossover. I have to answer for everything I did prior to the big event in New York City. And so now it's him saying, let me go. Let me go with Val Cooper because I did a lot of things wrong. So just like that, Charles Xavier has been officially arrested and taken away. But this kind of leads us into the ending of the storyline where we're now picking up with Psylocke going to home of Archangel. Now, for that couple right there, they have been struggling for a tad bit. The problem is that when she does get back home, she can't find him. He is completely missing. And so we're kind of left to wonder, where in the world is Archangel? And this Okay, so this is going to be our last X-Men Onslaught video. And so with that being said, we're kind of getting into the idea of really seeing things set up for the next few crossovers for the X-Men. Because when it came to Marvel Comics, their main goal was to just have the next crossover ready to go. Like, yes, we just had wrapped up one, we got to get the next one going. And so in this case, with Onslaught being done, we're now working our way up to Operation Zero Tolerance, but also kind of working our way up to the hunt for Xavier as well too. Now, with that being said, this takes place right after you had Charles Xavier go ahead and allow Val Cooper to basically arrest him. Because again, it was Charles at fault for what happened in the crossover. Like, it was his mind and the dark side of his mind and the dark side of Magneto that led into the creation of Onslaught. And so for the government and also Charles, they're kind of scared of the possibility there could be a chance that he may turn to Onslaught all over again. And if he does, they have less heroes on the board. And so he allowed Val Cooper to go ahead and arrest him. And that kind of leads into the problem of this storyline, because we do pick up with Charles Xavier, right? And we see him in a jumpsuit. Now you think first, like, yeah, we got arrested. So, like, of course, he would be in a jumpsuit. But the problem is that he's no longer with Val Cooper. Instead, he was quickly handed over to Bastion. And when it comes to Bastion at this point in time in Marvel Comics, he had agreed to work with multiple governments across the world to begin Operation Zero Tolerance to go after mutants across the board. But it's also him kind of telling us, like, when he looks at mutants, he don't see mutants as humans. He sees mutants as basically creatures that gotta be put down because how dangerous they truly are. Now, with all that being said, when it comes to Bastion, he's not alone at the moment. You also have Henry Gyrich there as well. But here's the thing. For Henry, he's very confused on why in the world Bastion is treating Charles the way he is currently. Because for Charles, he volunteered to go ahead and turn himself in because what happened in the Onslaught crossover. But right now, it's him seeing Charles on the floor in a jumpsuit, but all these extra security measures put on top of Charles like he's some kind of dangerous creature. Now, you also have Bastion kind of tell us that they're right now working out of a old Hulkbuster facility. So, of course, right now, this will be their base of operations. But either way, for Bastion, he does show Henry like why he believes that Charles Xavier is actually dangerous. And so this kind of leads into Bastion showing Henry Gyrich this videotape. Now, with this videotape, it's really more Bastion interrogating Charles Xavier, because for Bastion and Henry Gyrich, they have no idea why in the world Charles Xavier had turned himself in when it came to the whole idea of Onslaught. They have no idea that technically Charles Xavier was Onslaught in that huge event. But with that being said, it's also Bastion trying to prove that what he believes is actually correct. That mutants are dangerous. That mutants are creatures that have to be put down. And that's really final. But it's Charles, of course, disagreeing with Bastion. And every single time you have Bastion try to bring up a point where he believes that he is correct, you have Charles basically shoot him down. And that right there ticks off Bastion a lot. But also it's Charles saying like, you're basically Hitler. Like, you had agreed to work with different governments across the world to begin to go after a mutant race to hopefully kill off all mutants across the board. Like, basically, you are Hitler. And that right there just makes Bastion angry. And he actually does strike at Charles Xavier. Now, we also learned that for Bastion, he no longer calls Charles Xavier by his actual name. He calls him M13, a prisoner name, but a creature name as well. Now, with that being said, we also learned that there's a young girl there as well being held in that same facility, and that'll be M9. But before we have the chance to learn more about her, we kind of find out that somebody else arrived to help Bastion with Charles Xavier. And that would be a character known as Ingrid Tyson, better known as Dr. Tyson. Now, when it comes to Ingrid, her main goal is to give Charles Xavier full-on psych evaluation, kind of figure out, get more information out of Charles Xavier about the whole idea of the Onslaught event. Now, here's the thing, because at first, when she does arrive, everything does seem a tad bit normal, but then she sees a dead body being carried out. And that kind of begins the process of her wondering what in the you-know-what is going on at this facility. Now, once you do have Bastion show Charles Xavier, she's even more confused because, again, she also heard that Charles had gave himself up. He didn't fight back. He literally said, go ahead and arrest me because I have information about the whole Onslaught event. And so she's kind of wondering, like, why is the man knocked out right now on the ground? Now, with that being said, you do have somebody else there as well that came with Ingrid, but of course, they're not really together. And this person, and that would be Daryl Smith. And Daryl Smith actually first appeared in Wolverine issue number 95. And We barely even talked about him, but he does become somewhat important in a Venom Wolverine crossover that apparently I had just completely forgotten about, so we got to sit down and cover that. With that being said, when it came to that storyline, he was being controlled by a character known as Dirt Nap. Now, you did have Venom Wolverine being able to break him free. But either way, he is a mutant hunter undercover. But right when you have him introduce himself over to Bastion, you then have Bastion realize there's something going on the monitors at his base. Like he's only seeing teddy bears and rainbows. Now, for Bastion, he believes it's Charles Xavier, but in reality, it's not Charles Xavier. Matter of fact, around this time in Marvel Comics, we were kind of left to believe that Charles Xavier is completely powerless. And so kind of find out it's M9, the other prisoner, the young girl. Now for Nina, that's her name, she has a range of different abilities. Unfortunately, I'm not going to sit down here and try to explain all the different powers that she has, but she kind of realized that Charles Xavier is a prisoner like her, but also for Charles, he is a good person. But this kind of builds a bond between the two characters. Now, by the time you have Bastion arrive in the room Charles was at, Nina is long gone. She went back to her room. And so for Bastion, he believes it was Charles who had messed with the monitors, no one else. And so this kind of leads into Dr. Tyson kind of giving Charles Xavier a full-on, psych evaluation, because to her, it seems kind of weird this man will go out of his way to turn himself over to the government, but no one knows truly why. It's kind of like, wait a second. Why in the world would you just go ahead and give yourself up to the government? Like, there has to be more to the picture. But the thing is, for Charles, he's not really trying to give her any information at all, especially now, because he believed when he said, you know what, go ahead and arrest me, he'll be working with Val Cooper. But instead, he's now with Bastion. And he realized if he does give Bastion any piece of information at all, it would be a major problem. And so, of course, for Charles, he's kind of like, no, I can't tell you anything at all, but also I fear for your safety as well. And so that leads us back over to Bastion and also Henry. Now, for Henry, is him informing Bastion like, listen, M9 does have powers, but the problem is she's an alpha class, meaning that sooner or later, when she gets older, her powers will be way too strong for us to stop. Like, we have to go ahead and get rid of her now. And so, of course, they want to go ahead and kill her. The thing is, they can't do it because if they walk down there, Henry or Bastion, she's going to know what's up and try to escape. So why not go ahead and use somebody else? And that would be Daryl Smith, because Daryl Smith apparently is, untouchable. He has some kind of psi shield around him, which of course protects him from all different types of psychic abilities. And so, of course, that means he has the ability to get close to Nina and actually kill her off. And so that kind of leads us over to Charles Xavier, where he's once again confronted by Nina. Now, again, here we kind of learn more that Nina has a range of different abilities. Now, it's also Charles beginning to realize there's something going on with Bastion. Let me explain. Because for Nina, she's able to pick on people's emotions, an empath. And so she realized that Bastion is angry, but she can't read his mind. And for Charles, he's kind of like, wait a second. You can't read his mind? That's not okay. But she can also read the mind of Henry. And she kind of realized that sooner or later, these guys are coming after her. But she can read the mind of Charles Xavier. And with her doing that, she learns that he also has the ability to read other people's mind. Now, like I said earlier, for Charles, he believes that he's powerless. He believes. Because Nina says, oh, you believe you're powerless. But the thing is, you're not. Your powers have just been turned off. But I do have the ability to turn your powers back on. Now for Charles, he tells her, don't do that. But he'll kind of realize, wait a second, if she has that kind of ability, what does that mean for her? But then a phone appears. So it kind of left to believe that she has the ability to just, warp reality around them. And so with the phone, you had Charles Xavier call up Renee Machcombe. Now, Machcombe is an old character we saw in the earlier parts of our coverage over the X-Men. Now, just know that she's an old friend of Charles, but also like had a hand with things going on with Genosha as well over the years. Either way, it's him calling her to help get Nina the heck out of there. Now, while you have him on the phone, you do have Dr. Tyson realize the monitors that were watching Charles Xavier's room had just went offline again. All she sees is teddy bears and rainbows. And so, of course, she wants to know what's going on. When she walks in there, she finds Charles, but she also finds Nina. Now, with Charles, he tells us Nina's not a mutant. Nina was created in this government facility for who knows what, but that's why she has all these different types of abilities. Here's the problem though, because for Nina, she is an alpha class threat to the human race, but also as she gets older, she gets stronger. And so Charles basically taught her in a matter of seconds how to control her powers because she went into Charles' mind. And now it's Charles saying like, we got to get her out of here because she is a young girl and we have no idea what they're going to do to her. But you didn't have Nina say, well, I kind of read the minds of different people in this building and they want to DX me. DX means basically kill her off. And so now for Dr. Tyson and Charles, they got to work together to get her the heck out of there. And so this kind of leads into a fast ending because you do have Charles Xavier try his best to distract the guards, Bastion, and also Henry Gyrich long enough to allow Dr. Tyson to get Nina the heck out of there. Except while they were trying to escape, unfortunately, they were confronted by Darrell. And so we're kind of left to believe that Darrell had officially grabbed them and, of course, made them prisoners again. And really, right after we see Darrell, we see Charles not being able to get too far away, so he does get recaptured. We also see that Dr. Tyson has also been captured as well. So kind of left to wonder what happened to Nina. And so we see Darrell hold a bag, a DX bag. And of course, in the bag is Nina. And so we're kind of left to believe that Nina is officially dead. And the helicopter leaves with her dead body. Now, for Nina, she's not dead. What happened was that they put her dead body in that bag, but then at the very last second, she was able to sneak off the helicopter and she found Renee and they got the heck out of there. Now, for Charles, unfortunately, he is a prisoner again. For Dr. Tyson, she's leaving. She's going somewhere else. But for Bastion and Henry, they believe that Nina is officially dead. But in reality, she is not. Now we're kind of left to wonder, like, what else is special about this young girl? Because for Charles, he wants to know more about her, but also Daryl Smith as well. But the book does end on that note right there. And technically, that is the end to the whole Onslaught crossover. And so with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.